So you're considering moving to Georgia. Before you make the leap, here are the top 11 things I wish I had known before moving to the Peach State. Be sure to stay till the end because there's one that could save your life. Hi, I'm Daphne Bousquet, a realtor on Atlanta's South Side with eXp Realty, and I'm thrilled to share insights about Georgia that I learned the hard way. Things I wish someone had told me before I moved here from South Florida. So let's dive in. Since it is currently summer, let's start there. Summers are hot. I'm not talking about, ooh, I'm glowing hot. I'm talking about, why am I living in an oven hot? As a realtor, I'm running around showing houses all the time. And after one house, I pretty much look like this. I moved here from South Florida, so I was most definitely used to hot weather. In fact, when my husband asked me what I thought about moving to the Atlanta area, I was all for it since it was August and I was pregnant and I was hot. I was ready for cooler temperatures and different seasons. Summers in South Florida are long and hot and I was just over it. But nobody told me that summers in Georgia are even worse. They're not as long and it does cool off a bit at night, but the heat is possibly even more oppressive since there's no breeze coming off the ocean. The August after we moved here, it was 100 degrees every single day. I couldn't believe it. Thankfully, we haven't had a month like that since, but it's still blazing hot. In South Florida, the only seasons are summer and hurricane season. Here in Georgia, we have seasons. I just didn't know how many. Did you know that Georgia has 12 seasons? Georgia has winter, full spring, sometimes in February, when you think spring is here, but then there's second winter, which can even drop a dusting of snow or ice. And then there's the spring of deception, when you really think spring is here, but no, because then there's third winter. There is the pollinating, which we'll talk about later. And next comes actual spring, which is glorious and lasts for about 2 weeks. Followed by summer and hell's front porch, which is the one that nobody told me about, as I previously mentioned. We move on to fall's fall, which is similar to full spring, second summer, and finally actual fall. And actual fall is wonderful. I really never had experienced fall because I grew up in the Netherlands and our falls are wet and stormy and the leaves change colors and immediately get blown off the trees. So really no chance to enjoy them. Oh, and there's one more season, football season. So really 13 seasons in all. And in Georgia, football season is serious business. And I'm not talking NFL, but college football. Do not try to plan anything on a Saturday during football season without checking the schedule. You better find out when the University of Georgia is playing and plan around that. And of course, the University of Georgia is the big dog, but there are plenty of Georgia Tech and Alabama fans as well. The SEC dominates here in Georgia even before Georgia dominated the SEC. But if you don't care about college football, here's a pro tip. Go to the grocery store when Georgia plays and you'll have it all to yourself. Personally, I love college football, but since I'm a University of Miami alum, I care more about when the Hurricanes play. What is your favorite team? Do you have one? Drop it in the comments. One thing I wish I had known is where to move in Atlanta. Atlanta is big and there's a difference between ITP inside the perimeter and OTP outside the perimeter. There's a difference between the north side of Atlanta and the south side of Atlanta. They all have their pros and cons, of course, and it really depends on what kind of lifestyle you want and your budget. There are some beautiful neighborhoods inside the perimeter like Virginia Highland, Druid Hills, and Decatur that give you great proximity to downtown Atlanta if you work there. You have shops and restaurants, parks and nightlife all within walking distance. But those neighborhoods come with a price tag. And then you have the suburbs outside the perimeter, and that is a whole different ballgame. There is a difference between north and south, where the north side is much more built up and the majority of the people live. And that comes with all the amenities, of course, but also with traffic and congestion. The south side is a lot less congested and you still have some rural areas. It also gives you a lifestyle that's a bit slower. However, the South Side is growing fast, and I think you get a lot more bang for your buck. Check out this video with more information about the differences between the north and south sides of Atlanta. Georgia is also much more than just Atlanta. Georgia has the mountains, the lakes, and the beaches. It has countryside and cities. It has history and a future. And no matter what your interests are, Georgia has a place for you. I didn't realize there was this much variety in Georgia, and I love it. If you love the mountains, you can move to Ellijay, Helen, and Dahlonega, or any of the other lovely mountain towns. If you like city life, there's Atlanta, Savannah, and Augusta. The Golden Isles between Savannah and Jacksonville have their own special charm, with St. Simon's Island offering beach and golf lifestyle. If you like the water, there are a plethora of lakes to enjoy. There's Lake Allatoona, Lake Hartwell, Lake Oconee, Lake Sinclair, West Point Lake, Jackson Lake, just to name a few. There are even lakes in the mountains where you can enjoy both the lake and the mountains. And those are just the big lakes, when there's still a lot of smaller lakes around the state that offer lakefront living. But there is one area you should stay away from, and I will cover that at the end, so be sure to stay for that. Did you know that so many towns and cities in Georgia have real charming downtowns? It wasn't on my radar at all when I moved here. Frankly, South Florida has very little of that, but here in Georgia, many towns are built around a square with a courthouse. The square has shops and restaurants, and right off the square are homes, mostly historic. And I just love charming downtowns where you can walk around, shop, eat, and enjoy the events. And we all know about Savannah's Garden District, right? But there are so many more in Georgia, even around Atlanta. I had clients buy a historic home in downtown Newnan a couple of years ago, and they were just gushing recently about how much they love living there. Their home is historic, but completely updated, and it's just gorgeous. They have a front porch where they can watch the world go by and talk to their neighbors. And yes, that's very much a thing. And they can walk to the square and grab dinner. It just seems like something out of a movie, right? But it is completely real. And if you are looking for a lifestyle like that, we can make that happen. Southern hospitality is a real thing. The people in the South are very friendly, and that is disconcerting sometimes if you come from a place like the Northeast. Here in Georgia, it is normal to greet people you don't know and actually answer someone when they ask, "How y'all doing?" When you drive in your neighborhood, be sure to wave at your neighbors, because that's what we do here in Georgia. And yes, don't be surprised to be invited to enjoy sweet tea on your neighbor's front porch and to sit a spell, shoot the breeze. If this happens to be during the pollinating though, watch out. Although the weather is generally very nice during this time of year, so conducive to sitting on the front porch, you can expect to get covered by the yellow stuff. Pollen is a real issue here, and it is not uncommon to see everything covered by a yellow blanket. Don't open your window too much, because everything will be yellow before you know it. It also may take you a minute to learn the language here in the South. You can be forgiven if you think that people speak English here, but truly they speak Southern. Even though it may sound like a version of English, the meaning is completely different. For instance, bless your heart is not a compliment. If someone blesses your heart, they just called you, very politely, I may add, an idiot. If you are told to take your own sweet time, it does not, in fact, mean to take your time, but to get going. And hush up is a very polite way to say shut up. Southerners also don't cuss, but have their own euphemisms in place of swearing. So expect to hear, "What in the Sam Hill?" instead of "what the hell," or "dadgummit" instead of, well, you know. Vehicle ownership is transferred, or a new resident registers a vehicle for the first time, it is paid. So instead of paying a little tax every year when registration is due, here in Georgia, you pay it all up front. That is very annoying when you don't expect it, especially when you move here and have multiple vehicles to register. Finally, you may have noticed I left out Lake Lanier from the Big Lakes, and that is for a reason. Lake Lanier carries a special warning, and many people call it the most dangerous lake in America. Lake Lanier is a man-made reservoir and as such covers towns, railroads, and even an entire forest. It has its own legends, and a lot of locals will warn you that the lake is haunted because of the following story. One of the towns it flooded was Oscarville, which was a thriving Black community with rich farmland. Black landowners helped establish the prosperous town 30 miles north of Atlanta. In 1912, a young white woman was found dead in a forest near the area. In response, a white lynch mob swept through the town, killing people and burning many of the buildings. The Black residents were eventually driven out of the town, and a few decades later, Lake Lanier flooded out what was left of Oscarville. Beyond the dark urban legend, of course, the treetops of the forest that was flooded are not too far below the surface. And since the lake was not created with boaters in mind, and it is very murky, accidents happen, especially since this is a very popular lake with a lot of boaters, especially drunk ones, and that comes with a lot of accidents and sadly deaths. So if you go boating on one of our big lakes, choose a different lake or be very careful. Actually, be careful no matter which lake you go boating on or swim in, and because that is just good common sense. As a realtor, I love to help you with your move to Georgia. My contact information is in the description, and you can set up a free consultation with me at talkwithdaphne.com. Watch this video next with more tips for moving to Georgia and Atlanta.